And it is faith that I want to think about for a while this morning, particularly in relation to our gospel reading, because faith is at the very heart of this story. It talks about faithful people, people who have been committed, people who have been dedicated all through their lives, people who have lived a life of prayer, people who have lived a life of worship and commitment. And we hear about Simeon this morning. We hear that he was a devout man, that he had been praying fervently for his nation, for his people, and for himself, hoping for a new hope and a new direction for each and every one of them. And as a person of faith, he has made his way to the temple on a particular day to be present as yet another very ordinary father, mother, and child are making their way through the temple. Nothing to show them as exceptional, nothing to mark them out as in any way unique. And yet Simeon comes up to them, asks for the child, places the child in his arms, and in those wonderful, evocative words of the Nunc Dimittis, which we so often hear said in our worship, he proclaims that he has seen the Lord's Messiah, and the hopes and the prayers and the expectations of his heart have been realized on that day. What a huge positive message it is. A man of faith, but a man who has practiced faith. Very often we talk in our conversations, don't we, about many people we meet in our lives each day who have been through huge challenges, huge hurt, huge pain, the likes of which none of us can even remotely imagine. And yet, those people, those very people, when we meet them, they have that shining light of faith that even in the midst of the chaos and all the things that are going wrong in their lives, they have that faith. We're taken aback almost. We find it hard to believe that people can be so much at peace with themselves in the middle of all of these storms that are breaking upon their lives. We think it's almost a gift, something we get, something we take, and when we have it, we know it's there. But I think Simeon points to a new reality in our understanding of faith. It's one thing to have it. It's one thing to look upon it as a gift, but it's something to be practiced. Simeon practices his faith. He is a man of prayer. He is a man of thought. He is a man of worship. He has strengthened his faith through his connection with others, through the prayer that he has offered, and the community in which he has shared. So this practice of faith lies at the heart of Simeon in our story. But there's also something else. He is a man of expectation. He's been expecting good things. The expectancy of faith points us on to the fact that good things are coming, better things are coming, and life-changing things are coming to each and every one of us if we're open to it. He says he's been told, he's been promised that he will not die until he has seen the Lord's Messiah, and it has come to pass. So a man who practices faith, a man who has an expectant faith, but ultimately on a day when so many people are passing through the temple and many parents are there with their children, he has the eye of faith, able to distinguish in that moment what and who is really important. The ability to see beyond even his own eyesight to the point where he can see and understand that he is in God's own presence, that as he lifts God to his heart on that day in the form of that little child, he knows that God is with them. In our first reading this morning, we hear another vision. It's a vision looking to the future. Ezekiel, who has sat with God's people, who has reflected with God's people on their time of suffering and pain, their separation from their homeland, and all that is precious to them. He paints a picture of God's presence with them again. He has never left, of course, but the understanding that God is now present in that temple, in that place of worship. And as a reminder, there is only one route that is closed off, and that is the route that is dedicated as a symbol to God's presence among them. Ezekiel points to the fact that great things are ahead, new things are possible, and if we have again the eye of faith, we will glimpse them and thank God for them. It would be easy during all the time of COVID to have thought that nothing good was happening. It would be very, very easy, I think, in our own self-isolation and distance from family and friends to think that things surely were really, really bad. But there are great stories even through the midst of suffering. As we reflect upon the many people who down through these last 2 years, through their dedication and their care, and in ways that they might never even describe as faith, have rallied around and supported those who needed them so much. We've heard about the stories of good neighbourliness, of the care that was shown by people standing in people's front gardens and going no further but just asking that everybody was okay. How important the telephone has become in the last 2 years. When you couldn't be there in person, it was always still important to hear the voice of someone who was lifting your spirits and pointing you on to better times ahead. There was the dedication of our medical services and all those who are involved in public service in our country. All those who were prepared to extend their own working lives in order to keep everyone else safe, and from time to time just to remind us that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. To all those who have delivered our food and various other commodities to our homes, to all those who have worked in our shops and kept us in a sense of our own safety and their own safety too. There are so many signs of God's activity among us for which we can be thankful, but we need to have that eye of faith that is open to perceive it, to embrace it, and to love those who have given so much of themselves to our well-being. And there is much ahead for us as well. Much ahead as we become a people of vision again, people who see the new potential, the new hope, the new direction that's available to us. Are we prepared to embrace that future? Are we prepared to embrace that new, living dependency on one another, but also that life-changing opportunity to step out and to be the positive influences in our community that we can be? God has never gone away. God is still among us. We have perceived him in the lives of those who have cared for us. And now we once again commit ourselves to care for those around us and to be God's instruments in the world, and to return to worship, and to extend an invitation to all those in the next few weeks, cognizant of the concerns that you may have, that you would get the opportunity, at least at some stage in the next few weeks, to once more make that connection with us here in this church. And while online worship does have its value, and we welcome all those, particularly those who are at some distance from us this morning joining with us, we also extend a welcome to anyone who can to spend some time with us here and to embrace the time of vision and hope that lies ahead for each and every one of us. Faith is important. A practiced faith is essential. A faith of expectation for better and new times ahead is a requirement, but an essential item is the eye of faith that looks around, values what we see, acknowledges God's presence among us, and commits ourselves again to his way.